I'm Myra, 32 years old, and last week my mother stood up at my sister's rehearsal dinner and told 80 guests I wasn't her real daughter. She said it with a smile, in front of everyone, while announcing she was paying for the wedding, with money I'd secretly been giving them for 10 years. The whole room turned to look at me. I could feel their pity, their whispers, the weight of public humiliation pressing down on my chest. And then I smiled back, because I knew something they didn't. 3 words later, my mother's face went white. Before I continue, if you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with it. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now let me take you back 10 years, to the day everything began. 10 years ago, I was 22. Fresh out of college with an accounting degree and an entry-level job that barely covered rent. I thought I had my whole life figured out. My family looked picture-perfect from the outside. Dad, Richard Sterling, had been a sales director for 20 years. Mom, Diane, was a homemaker who treated our family's reputation like her full-time job. And then there was Chloe, my younger sister. 18, golden-haired, effortlessly charming. She'd just been accepted into a prestigious university on the East Coast. The favoritism wasn't new. It had always been there, woven into the fabric of our family, like an ugly thread no one acknowledged. When I graduated college, my parents threw me a small dinner, 5 people. Mom said, "You don't like crowds anyway, Myra." I didn't argue. I never did. 2 months later, Chloe got her acceptance letter. They rented out a restaurant. 50 guests, a 3-tier cake. Dad gave a speech about how proud he was of his little star. I sat in the corner, clapping along with everyone else. "Chloe needs encouragement," Mom explained when I asked about the difference. "She's young, she needs support. You've always been able to take care of yourself." I told myself she was right. Chloe was the baby, she needed more attention. I was the older sister, steady, reliable, invisible. That was my role. I had no idea that in just a few weeks my father would call me with news that would change everything. News that would turn me from the invisible daughter into something else entirely, something they would spend the next decade pretending didn't exist. The second sign came a week before that phone call. I was visiting home for Sunday dinner when I overheard Mom and Dad in the kitchen. They were planning to buy Chloe a car. Not just any car, a brand new Honda Civic for her to drive at college. "She can't be taking buses," Mom said. "What would people think?" I thought about my own commute. 2 hours each way on public transit. Crowded buses, late-night walks from the station to my apartment. No one had ever worried about what people thought of that. I didn't say anything. I never did. Swallow it down, Myra. Keep the peace. That Thursday night, my phone rang at 11 p.m., Dad's number. His voice was different, smaller, almost trembling. "Myra, I need to talk to you, but you can't tell anyone, especially not Chloe." My father was a proud man. In 30 years, I'd never heard him sound like this. "Dad, what's wrong?" A long pause. Then, "I lost my job, Myra, 3 weeks ago. And our retirement fund. It's almost gone. Bad investments. I thought I could fix it, but—" His voice cracked. My father, the man who never showed weakness, who lectured us about financial responsibility, who looked down on anyone who couldn't handle their own affairs, was calling his invisible daughter in the middle of the night, begging for help. "What do you need?" I asked. "Just don't tell your mother I called. She's already so stressed. And Chloe has school to focus on." Even then, even in crisis, I was the one they could burden without guilt. What he said next would reshape our relationship forever, though I didn't know yet whether it would break us or bind us. Dad laid it all out over the next hour. He'd been let go without warning. Corporate restructuring, they called it. At 55, no one was hiring. He'd sent out dozens of applications. Nothing. The retirement fund was worse. Years ago, he'd moved most of it into what a friend called a sure thing. The sure thing collapsed. What was supposed to be their safety net had shrunk to almost nothing. "We're 3 months behind on the mortgage," he admitted. "If we miss another payment, they could lose the house." The next day, Mom called. Her voice was thick with tears. "Myra, your father told me he spoke to you. I know we shouldn't ask, but you're the only one who can help. Chloe's still in school, she can't work, and we can't tell anyone about this. You understand, don't you?" I understood. I always understood. "What do you need me to do?" "Just a little help each month, until your father finds something. We'll pay you back, of course. But Myra," her voice dropped, "no one can know. Not Chloe, not your aunts, not anyone. We can't have people thinking this family is struggling." I was making $52,000 a year. After rent, utilities, and student loans, I had maybe $800 left each month. They were asking for $10,500. I said yes anyway. "You're such a good daughter," Mom whispered. "The best. We'll never forget this, Myra. Never." I set up an automatic transfer that week. Every month, $10,500 would flow from my account into their retirement fund. I picked up overtime shifts, canceled my gym membership, stopped eating out. It was supposed to be temporary. It wasn't. Let me tell you what 10 years of temporary looks like. I worked 60-hour weeks. I climbed from junior accountant to senior accountant to accounting manager to chief financial officer at a mid-sized pharmaceutical company. Every promotion meant a bigger paycheck and a bigger transfer to my parents. I lived in the same tiny studio apartment for 7 years. No vacations, no new furniture. I wore the same interview suit to every job until the elbows wore thin. Every month, $2,500. Then $3,000 when I got my first real raise. Then $3,500. Like clockwork, like breathing, like it was just part of who I was. And my parents? They never missed a beat. Chloe got a new car when she graduated, then a down payment for her first apartment, then a designer wardrobe for her marketing job in Manhattan. Her birthday parties were legendary, catered affairs with champagne and live music. My birthdays? A card. Sometimes a phone call if Mom remembered. I wasn't invited to most family gatherings. "You're always so busy with work," Mom would say. "We didn't want to bother you." The math was simple. 10 years. 120 months. An average of $2,800 per transfer. Over $336,000. I paid for my parents' retirement while they told everyone they'd done it themselves. I sacrificed my 20s while they celebrated my sister. I kept their secret while they slowly erased me from the family portrait. And not once, not a single time in 10 years, did they say thank you. Not officially, not in front of anyone, not in any way that mattered. I told myself it didn't matter. Actions speak louder than words, right? They knew what I'd done for them. I was wrong. I was 32 when I finally looked in the mirror and saw what I'd become. Daniel and I had been dating for 2 years. He was kind, patient, and completely confused by the way I lived. One night he asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Myra, have you ever thought about buying a place? For us?" I stared at my bank account. After 10 years of 6-figure salaries, I had less than $15,000 in savings. No house, no investments, no retirement fund of my own. Everything had gone to them. I'm not sure I can," I admitted. Daniel's face fell. Not with anger, with concern. "Myra, I love you, but sometimes I don't know who you're living for. It's not yourself." He was right, and I hated that he was right. The final blow came 2 weeks later. Mom called, breathless with excitement. "Chloe's engaged. To Brad. You remember, the lawyer? We're going to throw her the most beautiful wedding. Your father and I will pay for everything." Pay for everything. My stomach dropped. "What's the budget?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "Oh, somewhere around 80,000. Maybe more. She deserves a fairy tale, don't you think?" $80,000. 3 years of my transfers, money I'd sacrificed, vacations and relationships and my own future to provide, and they were going to spend it on a wedding while telling everyone they'd paid for it themselves. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. Something had to change. I just didn't know yet how much. Chloe's engagement was everything my parents had dreamed of. Brad Harrison came from old money, the kind that didn't need to brag because everyone already knew. His family owned half the commercial real estate in Hartford. He was handsome, polished, and looked at Chloe like she'd hung the moon. I wanted to be happy for her. Part of me was, but mostly I felt hollow. Mom called every day with wedding updates. The venue would be Riverside Country Club, the most exclusive in Connecticut. 300 guests, a designer dress, imported flowers, a 12-piece orchestra. "We're sparing no expense," she gushed. "Chloe deserves perfection." I finally asked the question burning in my throat. "Mom, where's the money coming from?" Silence. "That's not really your concern, Myra." "I think it is. Don't be difficult. This is your sister's special day. And I'm asking a simple question. Where is the money coming from?" "From us. From our savings. Why are you being like this?" "Their savings. The fund I'd been filling for a decade." "Those savings," I said carefully. "You mean the retirement fund?" "Myra." Her voice turned cold. "I don't like your tone. We've worked hard our whole lives. We're allowed to celebrate our daughter's wedding." "Which daughter?" She hung up. I sat in my apartment, hands shaking. For 10 years I'd stayed silent. I'd sacrificed. I'd told myself that family meant putting others first. But this wasn't family. This was erasure. I needed answers, real ones, and I knew exactly who to call. I drove to my parents' house that Saturday. Dad was in his study, the room that used to be off limits when I was a child. Now it just looked tired. Faded books, dusty golf trophies, a man trying to hold on to a version of himself that no longer existed. "Myra," he barely looked up. "Your mother said you called. I want to talk about the wedding budget." "There's nothing to discuss." "There's $336,000 to discuss, Dad." That got his attention. "Excuse me? I've been transferring money to your retirement fund for 10 years. You know exactly where it came from, and now you're spending it on Chloe's wedding while telling everyone you saved for it." His jaw tightened. "What do you want? A medal?" "I want acknowledgement. I want honesty." "You want attention." He stood up, his voice rising. "That's always been your problem, Myra. You do something nice, and then you need everyone to applaud. Chloe doesn't need validation for everything she does." "Chloe hasn't done anything. She's brought pride to this family. She's given us joy. What have you given us? Money?" He laughed bitterly. "Money is easy. Being a daughter is harder." I felt like I'd been slapped. "I've given you 10 years of my life, and we gave you 22 years of ours. We raised you, fed you, educated you. That money was your obligation. It's what children do." "It was a gift, Dad, freely given, and you never once what? Thanked you?" He sat back down, dismissive. "Grow up, Myra. The world doesn't owe you gratitude." I left without another word, but I'd already made my decision. The next morning, I called Marcus Webb. Marcus had been my family's financial advisor for 15 years, distinguished, professional, discreet. He was the only person outside our family who knew the truth about those monthly transfers. "Myra." His voice was warm but cautious. "I was wondering when you'd call. You know why I'm calling." A pause. "I can guess. I need to know the current state of my parents' retirement fund and whether they've made any large withdrawals recently." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Technically, I shouldn't disclose this without their permission. Marcus, I've been the primary contributor to that fund for a decade. I think I've earned some transparency." He sighed. "You're right. And honestly, Myra, I've been uncomfortable with this situation for years." He pulled up the records. Current balance is approximately $280,000, almost entirely from your contributions over the past 10 years. My stomach tightened. And the withdrawals? Another pause. $60,000, 3 weeks ago. For the wedding? I'm not officially allowed to confirm that, but yes. I closed my eyes. Marcus, what are my legal options here? Well, the transfers were classified as gifts. You can't reclaim them. He hesitated. But you can stop contributing at any time. There's no contract, no obligation, just an automatic transfer that you control. Would you be able to verify my contributions if someone asked? I have complete records, dates, amounts, everything, but Myra, why? Because I might need a witness. Silence. Myra, you should know. Your parents invited me to the rehearsal dinner. As a family friend. The pieces clicked into place. Thank you, Marcus. I'll see you there. The phone rang 3 days before the rehearsal dinner. Myra, it's Aunt Patricia. Aunt Patricia was Mom's older sister. The one person in our family who'd never quite bought the official narrative. At 70, she had the kind of quiet wisdom that came from watching decades of family drama unfold. I heard about the wedding, she said. Your mother won't stop talking about it. The venue, the flowers, the dress, how they're paying for everything. I said nothing. Myra, honey, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Where is that money actually coming from? My throat tightened. Why do you ask? Because I know your parents. I know they lost nearly everything in that investment scheme. I know your father hasn't worked in 10 years. Her voice softened. And I know you, sweetheart. I've watched you work yourself to the bone while Chloe gets everything handed to her. For the first time in years, I felt tears prick my eyes. Aunt Patricia, you don't have to tell me the details. But if what I suspect is true, if you've been carrying this family while they pretend you don't exist, I want you to know something. What? I see you. I've always seen you. And whatever happens at that dinner, I'll be in your corner. I took a shaky breath. How did you know? Because I'm the older sister too, Myra. I know what it's like to give and give until there's nothing left. A pause. And I know what it feels like when no one notices. We talked for another hour. By the end, I had something I hadn't had in years. An ally. That night, I sat at my computer and opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. Bank confirmations. 120 of them. Every single month for 10 years. Transfer confirmed. $2,500 to Sterling Family Trust. Transfer confirmed. $3,000 to Sterling Family Trust. Transfer confirmed. $3,500 to Sterling Family Trust. Each email was a timestamp, a receipt, proof. I forwarded them all to Marcus Webb. Then I backed them up to 3 different cloud services. Then I printed the first and last pages. Daniel found me at 2 a.m., surrounded by papers. What are you doing? Preparing. He sat down beside me, scanning the documents. His expression shifted from confusion to understanding to something like awe. Myra, this is over $300,000. I know. And they never know. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he took my hand. What are you planning? I don't know yet. I stared at the stack of papers. I've spent 10 years being silent, hoping they'd see what I'd done, hoping it would be enough to make them love me the same way they love her. And now? Now I realize that silence isn't a virtue. It's a cage I built for myself. I squeezed his hand. I'm done being invisible, Daniel. I'm done hoping my actions will speak for me. What changed? Mom called me not their real daughter to Aunt Patricia last week, while planning to spend my money on Chloe's wedding. Daniel's jaw tightened. I'm going to that rehearsal dinner, I said, and I'm not going to make a scene. But if they try to erase me in public... I looked at the stack of emails. I'm going to tell the truth. Now, I want to pause here for a moment. If you're wondering what I did next, trust me, I wasn't sure either at the time. But before we continue, I'm curious. What would you do? Would you confront them publicly or try to handle it privately? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to find out what happened at that rehearsal dinner, keep watching. The Riverside Country Club looked like something from a movie. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. Fresh peonies cascaded from every surface. Waiters in crisp white jackets circulated with champagne flutes on silver trays. The kind of elegance that whispered old money while costing new money fortunes. 80 guests mingled beneath soft golden light. Friends, family, colleagues. Brad's parents, immaculately dressed and impossibly poised. My parents' social circle, all designer dresses and practiced smiles. Daniel squeezed my hand as we walked in. You okay? Ask me again in an hour. I'd chosen my outfit carefully, a simple navy dress, elegant but understated. I wasn't here to compete with Chloe, I was here to survive. The first person I spotted was Marcus Webb. He stood near the bar, nursing a scotch, looking uncomfortable in his role as family friend. Our eyes met. He nodded almost imperceptibly. Then I saw Aunt Patricia at a corner table. She winked at me, a small gesture, but it steadied my nerves. Myra, you came! Chloe rushed over, champagne in hand, glowing in a white cocktail dress. She hugged me like we were close. We weren't. Of course I came. It's your rehearsal dinner. I'm so glad. Mom wasn't sure you'd show up. You know how you are with family events. How I am, like I'd been the one avoiding them. Wouldn't miss it, I said. She bounced off to greet other guests, and I was left standing in the middle of the room, surrounded by people who barely knew I existed. The chandeliers sparkled, the champagne flowed, everything was perfect. I had no idea that in less than 30 minutes, perfection would shatter. The clinking of a glass cut through the chatter. My father stood at the head table, champagne raised, my mother beside him in a silk dress that probably cost more than my first car. They looked like the perfect couple. Successful, generous, proud parents. May I have everyone's attention, please? The room quieted. 80 faces turned toward them. Diane and I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Dad's voice carried that salesman's warmth, smooth and practiced. 28 years ago, we were blessed with a daughter who has brought nothing but joy into our lives. I felt Daniel's hand find mine under the table. Chloe, Dad continued, you've made us prouder than we ever imagined. And Brad, he nodded toward the groom-to-be, we couldn't have asked for a better man to join our family. Polite applause. Brad smiled modestly. Then my mother took over. As many of you know, we've been planning this wedding for months. She laughed lightly. And I'm proud to say that Richard and I have taken care of everything. The venue, the catering, the flowers, all of it. Something cold settled in my stomach. We've saved our whole lives for this moment, Mom continued, her voice swelling with emotion. Because our daughter deserves nothing but the best. She paused. And then her eyes found mine across the room. We're paying for everything, she said, her smile sharp, because our real daughter deserves it. The room went still. Unlike some people. Every head turned to look at me. I felt the weight of 80 stares, the whispers starting, the judgment forming, and my mother just stood there, smiling, waiting for me to crumble. But I didn't crumble. I smiled back. The silence lasted 3 heartbeats. Then the whispers began. Who is she talking about? That's the older daughter, isn't it? Why would she say that? Poor thing. I could feel the room's pity pressing against me like a physical weight. The older sister, the forgotten one, the one who wasn't really family. Chloe stood frozen near the dessert table, her champagne glass suspended midair. Her face had gone red, embarrassment or shame, I couldn't tell. Brad was frowning, clearly uncomfortable. At the bar, Marcus Webb had set down his scotch. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were fixed on me. Aunt Patricia was already halfway out of her chair. Daniel leaned close. "We can leave. Right now. Say the word." I shook my head slowly. Because here's the thing about being invisible for 32 years. You learn to watch, to wait, to calculate. And in that moment, watching my mother's triumphant smile, I realized something. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a slip of the tongue. This was intentional. She'd planned this, chosen her words, waited for maximum audience. She wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone, to cement the narrative that I was the outsider, the disappointment, the daughter who didn't count. She expected me to cry, to leave, to prove her right. I thought about 10 years of silence, $336,000 in transfers, every birthday ignored, every sacrifice dismissed, and something inside me shifted. Not anger, something quieter, cleaner, clarity. I picked up my champagne glass and rose to my feet. The whispers stopped. My mother's smile flickered. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, "I'd like to add something to that toast." Every eye in the room was on me now. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, but my hands were steady. 10 years of swallowing my words had taught me one thing. When you finally speak, make it count. Thank you, Mom, for that memorable toast. I kept my voice pleasant, controlled. I especially appreciate being called not your real daughter in front of 80 people. That was a nice touch. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. My mother's smile was frozen. But since we're sharing tonight, I'd like to clarify one small detail. I turned toward the bar, where Marcus Webb stood motionless. "Mr. Webb, you've been our family's financial advisor for 15 years. Would you mind confirming something for me?" Marcus looked like a man caught between two oncoming trains. "Myra!" My father's voice was sharp. "This isn't the time." "Actually, Dad, I think it's exactly the time." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "Mom just told everyone that you saved your whole lives to pay for this wedding. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page about what savings means." The room had gone completely silent. You could hear the ice settling in glasses. "Mr. Webb," I continued, "in the past 10 years, who has been the primary contributor to my parents' retirement fund?" Marcus glanced at my father, then my mother, then back at me. "Myra, I'm not sure I should—" "You have the records. You've had them for a decade." I kept my voice gentle. "I'm not asking you to violate confidentiality. I'm asking you to tell the truth." The silence stretched. Then Marcus Webb straightened his shoulders. "I think," he said quietly, "everyone deserves to know the truth." Marcus Webb cleared his throat. "According to my records," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the silent room, "over the past 10 years, Myra Sterling has transferred approximately $336,000 into her parents' retirement fund." A gasp rippled through the crowd. "That fund," Marcus continued, "which currently holds around $280,000 after recent withdrawals, consists almost entirely of Myra's contributions, monthly transfers, every single month for 10 years. I watched the room process this information, eyes widening, heads turning, the math clicking into place. My mother's face had gone pale. That's private family business. You made it public, Mom." My voice was calm. "You called me not your real daughter in front of everyone here. You said you were paying for everything. I'm simply clarifying where that money actually came from." "This is outrageous," my father sputtered. "Marcus, you had no right." "He had every right," I interrupted, "and so do I." From the corner of my eye, I saw Aunt Patricia stand up. "Diane," her voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Is this true? Has Myra been supporting you for 10 years while you treated her like a stranger?" My mother's mouth opened and closed. Brad pulled Chloe aside, whispering urgently. Chloe looked shell-shocked, tears forming in her eyes. The whispers had become a low roar. I heard fragments. Over 300,000. 10 years? And they never… I can't believe… My father tried to regain control. This is a misunderstanding. We'll discuss this privately as a family. No. I shook my head. We've had 10 years of private. 10 years of secrets. 10 years of me staying quiet while you erased me. I raised my champagne glass. Now it's time for something different. The room was utterly still. I looked at my parents, really looked at them. My father, red-faced and furious. My mother, pale and trembling. For 32 years, I had desperately wanted them to see me, to love me the way they loved Chloe, to acknowledge that I mattered. Now, standing in this beautiful room surrounded by witnesses, I realized something. Their approval was never coming, and I didn't need it anymore. Mom, you asked who your real daughter is. I kept my voice steady. Let me answer that. She gripped my father's arm. Your real daughter is the one who worked 60-hour weeks while you told everyone she was too busy for family. I took a breath. Your real daughter is the one who gave up buying a home so you wouldn't lose yours. The words came easier now. 10 years of silence, finally breaking. Your real daughter is the one who kept your secret for a decade because you asked her to, who never told Chloe, who never told anyone, who sacrificed her 20s, her savings, her future, for you. My mother had started crying, but I wasn't finished. But here's the thing about real daughters, Mom. They deserve to be treated like family, and I haven't been. I raised my glass higher, so I have 3 words for you. The room held its breath. I looked directly into my mother's eyes. I'm stopping payments. My mother's face went white. Effective immediately. I've already notified Marcus. The automatic transfers end today. I set down my glass. You want to pay for everything? Now you'll actually have to. Dead silence. Then my father's champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. The sound of breaking glass seemed to snap everyone back to reality. You can't do this. My father's voice was hoarse. We have an agreement. We have nothing in writing, Dad. No contract, no legal obligation. I kept my tone professional, like I was discussing quarterly reports. I gave you gifts, generous gifts, and I have every legal right to stop giving them. Myra, please. My mother reached toward me, tears streaming. You'll destroy this family. Is that what you want? I'm not destroying anything. I'm just refusing to be destroyed anymore. Marcus Webb quietly gathered his jacket, clearly relieved to have the truth finally out. He caught my eye and nodded once. Validation, confirmation. Brad had pulled Chloe to the edge of the room. They were in intense conversation, his hand on her shoulder, her face crumpled with confusion and something else. Was it guilt? The other guests didn't know where to look. Some stared at my parents with new eyes. Others whispered behind hands. A few were already reaching for their phones. This is insane, my father tried again. You're making yourself look ridiculous. Richard, Aunt Patricia's voice cut through his bluster. Stop. You've said enough. She walked over and stood beside me. For 10 years, I watched my niece fade into the background while you celebrated Chloe. For 10 years, I suspected something wasn't right. She looked at my mother, her own sister, with something like pity. I never imagined it was this. My mother sobbed harder. I touched Aunt Patricia's arm gratefully. Then I turned back to my parents. I don't want you to suffer, I said quietly. But I'm done suffering for you. Daniel stood up and took my hand. It was time to go. I picked up my clutch and looked at Chloe one last time. She was still crying, Brad's arm around her. I walked over, and she flinched like I might hit her. Chloe, Myra, I didn't know. I swear I didn't. I believe you. And I did. Chloe had been raised in a bubble of favoritism so complete that she'd never questioned where it came from. I don't blame you for any of this, Her lip trembled. But the wedding will still happen. Brad loves you. That's real. I took her hand briefly. But it won't happen on my money, and I hope someday you understand why that matters. I turned to go. Daniel was waiting by the door, jacket over his arm. Myra! My mother's voice, shrill and desperate. You're walking away from this family! I paused at the threshold. No, Mom. I'm walking toward a family that actually exists. I looked at Daniel, at Aunt Patricia, who was gathering her things to leave with us. One that sees me, that values me, that doesn't need me to buy my way in. I stepped into the night. The air was cool and clean. Behind me I could hear my father's voice rising, my mother's sobs, the chaos of a party that had become something else entirely. Daniel wrapped his arm around me. You did the right thing. I know. But my voice cracked. So why does it hurt so much? Aunt Patricia caught up to us in the parking lot. She pulled me into a hug, warm and firm and completely unexpected. Because love doesn't stop just because you set a boundary, she whispered, but neither should self-respect. I let myself cry then, finally, after 10 years. My phone exploded the next morning, 15 missed calls from my father, 23 texts from my mother, ranging from tearful apologies to furious accusations, voicemails I couldn't bring myself to play. Daniel made me pancakes while I stared at the screen. The first text from Mom. Myra, please call us. We need to talk. You've humiliated us. The 5th. I'm your mother. How could you do this? The 10th. If you don't call back, don't bother coming to the wedding. The 15th. I always knew you were jealous of Chloe. I turned off my phone. Mid-morning, a different name appeared on Daniel's screen. Chloe. Should I answer? He asked. I nodded. He put it on speaker. Myra, it's Chloe. Her voice was thick with tears. I know you're probably not answering your phone. I needed to ask. Ask what? Is my wedding ruined? Is it all going to fall apart because of... She stopped. I'm sorry, that sounds selfish. It's okay. It is your wedding. But Brad says he still wants to marry me. He says his family will help if needed. He says... She took a shaky breath. He says I should have known something was wrong, that I should have asked questions. I closed my eyes. Chloe, your wedding isn't ruined. Brad loves you. But yes, things are going to change. Mom and Dad won't be able to pay for everything they promised. Silence. Myra, do you hate me? The question hung in the air. No, I said finally. I don't hate you. I'm just done pretending that everything was fair. An email notification pinged on my laptop. From Marcus Webb. Transfer terminated as requested. Confirmation attached. It was really over. The fallout spread faster than I expected. Within a week, the story had circulated through my parents' entire social circle. 80 guests had witnessed the confrontation. 80 people went home and told their spouses, their friends, their book clubs and golf buddies. Aunt Patricia called me with updates. Your father got cornered at the country club yesterday, she said. Frank Miller, you know, his old golf partner, asked him point blank, you let your daughter support you for 10 years and still treated her like that? I didn't feel triumph, just exhaustion. What did he say? Tried to explain it away, said you were exaggerating, said families help each other. She paused. Frank didn't buy it. Neither did anyone else. My mother, apparently, had become the subject of whispers at her women's club. The same women she'd spent years impressing with stories of her successful family were now looking at her differently. Did you hear about the Sterling situation? I always thought something was off. Poor Myra, all those years. 2 weeks before the wedding, my parents made their announcement. The reception was being scaled down. 300 guests became 100. The 12-piece orchestra became a DJ. The imported flowers became local arrangements. Brad's family quietly covered the difference. Chloe called me after. Mom told everyone it's because of unexpected changes. Her voice was small. Brad's parents know the truth. They were not impressed. I'm sorry, Chloe. Don't be. She hesitated. Brad said something to me last night. He said, if your sister could do all that for your parents with no recognition, imagine how loyal she'd be to people who actually appreciated her. A lump formed in my throat. He sounds like a good man. He is. And Myra? I'm starting to understand. 3 months later, I opened a savings account. It sounds small, but it wasn't. For the first time in a decade, money I earned stayed with me. No automatic transfers, no silent sacrifices, just mine. Daniel and I started looking at apartments together, real ones, with room for a future. Every listing we toured felt like a door opening. At work, the stress that had lived in my shoulders for years began to ease. I got a promotion, CFO now, officially, and actually celebrated it. Dinner at a nice restaurant, champagne. Daniel across the table, telling me he was proud. I started therapy. That was harder than I expected. Unpacking 32 years of feeling invisible doesn't happen in one session, or 10. But slowly, I began to understand patterns I'd never seen before. You developed what's called a fawn response, my therapist explained. When you sensed potential rejection, you tried to prevent it by being useful, by being needed. And that's why I gave them everything. You weren't buying their love, Myra. You were trying to earn your place in the family. But here's the thing. She leaned forward. Your place shouldn't require payment. I thought about that a lot in the weeks that followed. Aunt Patricia became my closest family connection. Weekly phone calls, monthly brunches. She told me stories about my mother as a young woman, not to excuse her, but to help me understand. Diane was always terrified of how things looked, Patricia said. Our parents were the same way. She learned that appearance was everything. And when reality didn't match the image, she shrugged sadly. She just denied reality. It didn't make it okay. But it helped me stop asking myself what I'd done wrong. The answer was nothing. I'd done nothing wrong. We're almost at the end now, but I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to set a boundary with someone you love? Was it with family, a friend, someone you trusted? I'd really love to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're going through something similar right now, I hope my story gives you a little bit of courage. Let's finish this together. Chloe's wedding was smaller than planned, but it was beautiful. I went. Not for my parents, I barely spoke to them, but for Chloe. Because she was my sister, and because she was finally starting to see me. The ceremony was held in a garden behind Brad's family's estate. White chairs on green grass. A simple arch covered in local flowers. Intimate, real. I sat in the back with Daniel, wearing a dress I'd bought for myself for the first time in years. Aunt Patricia was 2 rows ahead, shooting me encouraging smiles. When Chloe walked down the aisle, she looked radiant. And when her eyes found mine, she paused, just for a second, and mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." I nodded. At the reception, my parents kept their distance. We exchanged polite words, nothing more. My mother looked older than she had 3 months ago. My father seemed diminished somehow, smaller in his expensive suit. Before I left, my mother approached me. "Myra," her voice was strained, Do you still love us?" I considered the question. "Yes," I said finally. "I do." Hope flickered in her eyes. "But I love myself more now, and that means I can't keep being the person who gives everything while getting nothing back." "We could change? Maybe." I touched her arm gently. "But that's not my responsibility anymore. You have to want to change. Not because I stopped paying, but because you realize what you did was wrong." She didn't have an answer to that. I found Chloe before leaving and handed her an envelope. "It's not money," I said. "It's a letter. Read it when you're ready." She hugged me, really hugged me, for the first time since we were children. It felt like a beginning. 6 months later, Daniel and I moved into our first apartment together. It wasn't huge. 2 bedrooms, a small balcony, a kitchen where we kept bumping into each other. But it was ours. Paid for with my money. Money I'd earned and kept. The first night, we sat on the balcony with takeout and cheap wine, looking at the city lights. Regrets? Daniel asked. I thought about it. Only that I waited so long. My relationship with my parents became what it needed to be, distant but not hostile. I called on holidays, visited occasionally, but the easy access was gone, and so was the expectation that I would fix everything. They had to adjust, sell the big house, move into a smaller condo, learn to live within their means. My mother complained about it to anyone who would listen, but fewer people were listening these days. Chloe and I grew closer. She read my letter and cried for an hour. Then she called me and we talked, really talked, for the first time in our lives. I was so blind, she said. I'm so sorry. You didn't know. I should have asked. I should have seen. Maybe. But we can't change the past. We can only choose what comes next. I look in the mirror these days and finally recognize the person staring back. Not invisible. Not the forgotten daughter. Not the one who gives until there's nothing left. Just Myra, 32 years old, figuring it out. And you know what? That's enough. It was always enough. I just had to stop waiting for someone else to tell me so. After everything settled, I spent a lot of time thinking about why. Why did my parents treat me that way? Were they evil, cruel, monsters? My therapist helped me understand something important. People aren't usually villains in their own story. They're just people, shaped by their own fears and wounds. My father lost his job at 55. For a man who built his entire identity on being a provider, that was devastating. He couldn't handle depending on his invisible daughter, so he rewrote the narrative. I became obligation, not sacrifice. My support became duty, not generosity. It was easier than admitting he needed help. My mother was more complicated. She'd grown up in a household where appearance was everything. When I was born premature and sick, I think some part of her resented me for disrupting her perfect family image. Chloe came later, healthy, beautiful, easy. The daughter she'd imagined having. Admitting what she'd done to me would mean admitting she'd been wrong for 30 years. Easier to deny, easier to pretend. None of this excuses them. Understanding isn't the same as forgiving. But it helped me stop asking the question that had haunted me my whole life. What did I do wrong? The answer, I finally realized, was nothing. I didn't do anything wrong. I was born to people who weren't equipped to love me the way I needed. That was their failure, not mine. And staying silent, giving endlessly, hoping they'd eventually see me. That was me trying to fix something that was never my responsibility to fix. You can't earn love from people who don't know how to give it. But you can learn to give it to yourself. That's the lesson I wish I'd learned 10 years earlier. So what about me? What was my mistake? I think I believed that if I just gave enough, loved enough, sacrificed enough, I could finally earn my place at the table. That actions would speak louder than words. That someday, somehow, they'd look at me and see what I'd done. That was my weakness. And they exploited it, maybe not consciously, but consistently. I was terrified of being abandoned, of being confirmed as unlovable. So I made myself indispensable instead. I thought being needed was the same as being wanted. It wasn't. If you're watching this and something resonates, if you recognize yourself in my story, I want to tell you something. You don't have to burn yourself down to keep others warm. Your worth isn't measured by what you sacrifice. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival. Silence isn't peace. Sometimes it's just a cage you build around yourself, waiting for someone else to unlock the door. Here's the truth. They're not going to unlock it. You have to do it yourself. And it will hurt. Walking away from people you love, even when they're hurting you, that hurts. Choosing yourself when you've spent your whole life choosing everyone else, that hurts too. But staying hurts more. I know because I did it for 10 years. So if you're in that place right now, wondering whether you deserve better, let me answer that for you. Yes, you do. Not because I say so, but because it's true. And the moment you start believing it, really believing it, everything changes. I'm not angry at my parents anymore. I'm not trying to punish them. I'm just finally, for the first time in my life, putting myself first. It's not revenge, it's healing. And I'm just getting started. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story touched you in any way, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment, share your own experience. I read every single one. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It means more than you know. And check out the description below for more stories like this one. I think you'll connect with them too. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it.